distress are quite happy in their marriages, and it's not a question of whether or not a woman is working. What's most important, what turns out to be a huge predictor of marriage, is whether or not the man, or of divorce rather, is whether or not the man is working. And if the man isn't working, then it's much more likely that the couple's going to get divorced than when he is working. If the woman's working...
I love when scholars support my pet theories that I invent in my living room. I love this. So,
shucks.
Please,
Well,
keep
it's
talking.
yes.
Yeah.
No, it's just to say when women work, it's a question of what's the underlying marital happiness, which has it's less to do with whether or not women are working and much more to do with what's the underlying level of happiness.
Right. And do you think, I guess, Daniel, that there's anything to, again, let me back up. We have talked a lot about alternative family structures or unconventional family structures or changing family structures. I would wager that some of the criticism of unusual family arrangements or messy family arrangements is that they are overly secularized, right? That there's some, call it moral, call it irreligious component there. Would you say, based on anecdata, data or your own experience as someone who treats religious people and not religious people, that people entering into a union, a civil union or marriage, in a religious context are going into it with a kind of better view towards the institution? Or is it, do you see it as like that's a straw herring or something?
First of all, I wouldn't say that alternate family arrangements are secularized. I think a lot of religions, including my church, are very supportive of what might be called modern family arrangements and so forth. So I wouldn't call them secularized. I think the religion and the church blesses those. There doesn't seem to be any difference, as they say, among, let's say, Christians of any sort, evangelical to liberal, in relationship to divorce. But it does appear that going to church several times a month is, I believe, associated with 30% less divorce, regardless of again, conservative or liberal. So I think that there's something about commitment in a community that probably supports it.
And I guess the question there is a cause correlation one that we're not going to answer in the next 15 minutes.
Right.
And I guess, Wendy, do you see a policy prescription? I mean, I understand from reading your work and from hearing you talk a little bit that you have a view of things that are maybe more likely to lead to better outcomes post-dissolution. Mm-hmm. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. But do you see, if you could kind of wave a magic wand and have a policy in place, for example, should everyone have to go through the equivalent of pre-Cana, which is what Catholics have to do before they get married, as far as I know. Is there something that comes to mind for you to say, I wish everybody had to do X?
Yeah, I'm nervous about policy prescriptions in terms of, invading, just like invading your family, right? Invading the family life. So, but that said, I feel like we need more marriage education. I feel like it should start in high school, like relationship education. I think if you are looking at divorce, you should have to go to divorce counseling. Again, it's like, do you want to mandate this? I don't know. I think if you have children, absolutely, one of these programs should be very, very accessible. If not, it's very hard. Like, I'm doing this book, and I just found out about the Sesame Street thing. It's very hard to find these kinds of things. So I feel like marriage education, divorce education, something about dealing with children. And then there's so much research now coming out of positive psychology about a lot of this cognitive behavioral therapy techniques for helping people deal with what happens in divorce, such as loneliness. There's a lot of research about the benefit of empathy over anger and how empathy can help you reduce your own anger. There's divorce coaches now, and my divorce coach talks about trying to see everything that happens in your divorce as a positive for you. Like what can you learn from this? How can you grow from this? And to not get into thinking, well, he has it better than I do, which is really easy to do. So in terms of policy prescription, I think these are like some psychological tools that would be very useful. And then I also think
That makes my heart like race with anxiety. I just to
that you would
share,
have
yeah.
to do some kind of
No, that whole idea that the embrace the positive.
Oh,
so yes, that just makes me incredibly tense. But that's probably.
But you know, it's like I'm not.
That's
like,
a separate.
right.
That's a separate discussion. Yeah.
I'm not advocating. I'm not trying to advocate divorce, but if you're doing it, right, you're doing it. So if you've never had to pay your bills and suddenly you have to, well, that's great, right? That can be a great growth experience. So if you're
Sure.
doing it, like I feel like even issues with loneliness, a lot of people are lonely in their marriage. So now you're out of your marriage and you're lonely. So let's take a look at, who's in your life and how do you view yourself and your relationship with others? Like, is there